Whether we need glasses or not, we all wear different lenses that affect how we see the world around us. Our culture, families, and personal experiences all act as a lens, coloring how we understand what is wrong and what is right. So, how can we tell whether our lenses are distorting how we see the world or clarifying how we see the world and what we understand as truth? As we'll find in Colossians, we need to carefully identify these lenses in our own lives as they can distort our view of ourselves, God, and how to live a fruitful life. Colossae was a small town in Asia Minor. Like other towns in the region, it was not lacking in diversity. For hundreds of years, Greeks from the West and Jews from the East converged into this place. The Colossians loved to entertain philosophies from all of these faraway places that sought to explain the mystical and spiritual world. They then blended together elements from these different religious beliefs. The result of this blending was a worldview called dualism. Dualism draws a firm distinction between the spiritual realm of the divine, which is good, and the physical realm of matter, which is evil. Some dualists reason that there was no way that a perfect divine being could have created the evil physical realm. Even having the slightest contact with the physical realm would tarnish his perfection. Instead, they concluded that God must have created some lower-level spiritual rulers and authorities like angels and demigods who stood between himself and the physical realm. These spirits were far enough removed from the purity of the divine that they could create this evil physical realm. As humans are both physical and spiritual beings, this left them in a difficult place. The physical realm acted like shackles, binding the human spirit to its evil. So, how are humans to become free from these shackles and reconcile their spirit with God? Dualists believe that they must weaken their flesh and strengthen their spirit. They would deprive themselves of things they desired like good food, pleasure, and money as a way to punish the physical body and weaken its grip on their soul. Instead, they focused on what they considered spiritual activities, including some Jewish dietary laws and rituals, to elevate their spirit. With a strengthened spirit, they believed they could navigate their way through the spiritual rulers and authorities and reconcile themselves to God. Eventually, a local citizen named Epaphras encountered the gospel message, and it shattered his Colossian lenses. God didn't keep himself separate from this physical realm and hidden from humans. Instead, he came to us in complete fullness and in bodily form. And if that's not surprising enough, he doesn't dwell in some far-off realm, but he now dwells within believers. Full of zeal, Epaphras founded a small church in his hometown. As people joined this new church, many tried to fit Jesus into their preconceived beliefs. Through their lens of dualism, they saw Jesus as just another spiritual power that lay between them and God, whom they must try to impress. They continued to see God as distant and impersonal. Because of this, they still felt compelled to deny their flesh in order to enhance their spiritual stature, hoping to make themselves more spiritual and acceptable to God. Many years later, Epaphras ended up in house arrest together with Paul in Rome. He shared with Paul these issues surrounding the Colossian church. It just so happened that Paul had been discipling a runaway slave from Colossae named Onesimus and was about to send him back. This was the same Onesimus that we read about in the book of Philemon. Epaphras used this opportunity to enlist Paul to write a letter to the church at large and bring clarity to their cultural lenses which were distorting their view of Christ. The Colossians made the mistake of viewing Christ through their old distorted lenses. Because of that, they failed to see that Jesus is the whole fullness of God and that through his death, they are now reconciled to God. As a result, there is nothing that they could do to make themselves more spiritual or acceptable to God. In the same way, we also have to ask ourselves, is our culture distorting how we see Jesus in the Bible? Or is the Bible clarifying how we see our culture and the world around us? As we follow what Paul says in 3 verse 10 and clothe ourselves with God's truth,